Welcome to the Ambitious Introvert podcast, created especially for introverts, empaths, and highly sensitive entrepreneurs to help you build, grow, and scale a successful, sustainable business. I'm your host, Emma-Louise Parks, business and mindset coach for ambitious introverts. After 17 years working as an air traffic controller, the ultimate fast-paced, high-stimulus, extrovert-friendly role, my mission now is to show introverts that they too can create big results and success because of who they are, not in spite of it. I focus on introvert-friendly business and marketing strategy to help you switch overwhelm for clarity, confidence, and clients. Hello, welcome to this guest episode of the Ambitious Introvert podcast with me, Emma-Louise, and today is actually my first returning guest. So I first interviewed Emily Walker for the show probably about a year ago. We had just concluded working together. I had hired her as the amazing instructional designer that she is to help me map out the Ambitious Introvert Academy, the Quiet Power Mastermind, and also what a vault of resources for my clients could look like. So we did a lot of work together, became really great friends during that time. And then Emily also hired me back to help her with her messaging as she was going through a big up level at the time in her business. So she was back on, I think it was back about a year ago. I'll pop it in the show notes. On the show then, talking about instructional design, talking about the kind of work that she does and how she approaches helping coaches, consultants, experts to package their knowledge in a way that they are able to scale and serve more people. In fact, messaging that Emily and I worked on together was that she helps people to create a program that they're wildly in love with that gets their people life-changing results. And it truly, truly does because, as I say, she's helped me design 2 of my programs, so I can vouch for that. Anyway, the reason that I invited Emily back is, as I say, we've become good friends. We've spent a ton of time together. We went to Paris together. And behind the scenes last year, Emily was going through being tested for ADHD and go through all the evaluations and the therapy that comes with that. So it was quite a big time for her and something that was obviously having a big impact on her energy and her business. Not that you would have known it from the outside because she'd been super successful. She had a record year. She crossed the $250,000 in revenue mark, all of these great things. But she was in a place where she was definitely struggling with certain aspects of the business. So as she went through the diagnosis and decided to go down the medication route, I've been able to see all of this behind the scenes as a friend. And ADHD is something that we hear about a lot now in the entrepreneurial space. A lot of people are getting diagnosis as adults. So I wanted to share Emily's story of identifying herself as neurodivergent and the steps that she decided to take, just so that people can see what's going on really behind the scenes. Now, there are a couple of caveats I will say to this. Obviously, nothing in this episode constitutes medical advice whatsoever. We are just sharing Emily's experience that she went through. Also, medication isn't for everyone, and Emily's very clear about that. So for her, it was a good option, and it was something that she decided to do, but that's not saying that everyone that's diagnosed with ADHD should do that or needs to do that. For her, it was the right choice. For someone else, it may not be. And the other thing to say with that is Emily had a really great experience with the medication. Literally, she managed to hit the sweet spot of the dosage straight away. She's had no side effects. It's had a massive impact on her. That is not always the case for people. Some people struggle a lot and some people have hideous side effects. So again, take everything that you hear in this episode, not as medical advice, not as saying this is how it should be, but simply just to share one person's experience of going through the evaluation, going through the diagnosis, deciding on a route to take, and the difference that it has made. And also the mindset difference of, Emily talks a lot about even how just having the diagnosis really helped her feel a certain way. And I think this is important because we can use boxes and labels to limit ourselves, or we can really use them to free ourselves. The same, I always say this with introvert, with highly sensitive. We can make that an excuse for things, or we can allow that to be a part of our identity and give us a deeper understanding of ourselves and give us permission to do things in a certain way. So that is definitely the message that I hope this episode gets across. Now, before we head straight in and hear Emily's story, I also wanted to give you a bit more information on the group VIP day that Emily and I are hosting together in London on May the 10th. We can't wait to run an event together. We can't wait to see each other again in person. And we just both felt that after lockdown and everything, it would be so nice to do something in person. So we decided to create Elevate and Amplify, which is an in-person group VIP day. And it is probably what I needed when I hired Emily, if it had been available, if I wasn't in a position to hire her one-on-one. So when you are thinking about scaling your business, if you're thinking about having a scalable offer, whether that's taking what you do with existing one-on-one clients and turning it into a course or a group or a one-to-many program, whatever that looks like for you, that can feel really daunting. I know for me that I didn't really believe necessarily people could get results that they get in one-on-one in a group container. I thought that the power would be diluted. I didn't know how I would get my knowledge across in a way that was digestible, actionable, that people would take away and implement. All of these things were going around my head, which is why I hired Emily, because I didn't want to just brain dump my stuff into a course that didn't help anyone with anything. There are enough bad courses in the world without them being added to. So this is really Emily's expertise. This is really where she shines at being able to pull out what's needed and get rid of what's not. And I will say that because there's so much stuff that I could have put into programs that I didn't because we realized it was just superfluous. So if you resonate with any of that, but you know that you would like to scale your services, you know that you would like to be able to offer them to more people, you would like to be able to scale your revenue without necessarily working more hours, then creating your scalable offer is the first thing that we are going to cover on that day, with Emily's magic brain pulling it all out of you. And the other aspect of the day is with me, where we're going to look at the messaging. So as I said, I do a lot of messaging work with clients. I really love it. I really love language. I really love the way we talk and position ourselves in the market. And I love the way that certain words and phrases and certain things resonate with people and other things don't. And that's always been a real passion of mine from a psychological point of view and from an NLP and now from a marketing point of view. So I love supporting my clients with this. I love supporting Emily with this in her work. So we know that when you have a scalable offer, being able to talk about it and sell it successfully is the most important thing, because it's no good having this great offer that you've paid someone to design and it sits there and no one understands why they need it. Quite often, this offer might have a slightly different ideal client to people that you're working with, or it might be people at a certain stage of business, or you might need to understand where the transformation in the offer is and that that's actually what you're marketing versus a one-on-one. So lots of things to think about, but I really wanted to do this session in the afternoon so that once you've got the outline and the high-level overview of your offer from Emily, you also have the correct terms to market it with. You understand the transformation of it. You've got the confidence to talk about it, and you know exactly who it is that you have created it for, and you can, and therefore sell it with ease. So that is what our day together is all about. And we will be concluding with a cocktail. So I just thought I would add that in for any of you that are also looking forward to the social aspect. We are really excited to be bringing people together. We think in person is hugely powerful. The group will be limited to 8 because we want to make sure that everyone's got the chance to get one-on-one attention. So there will be 8 people. I'm recording this back in March, so we're only just releasing it. As of now, all 8 spaces are available, but by the time you're listening to this, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. So I'm going to pop the details in the show notes. The link is there. It's got a list of all of the details. It's got a list of all of the bonuses that are also included, many of which are Emily's amazing courses, which I also have access to. And I can tell you they are brilliant. The value of those is probably as much as the day, if I'm honest. So please have a look. If you've got any questions, reach out to us. And I really hope that you might join us in person to start creating your scalable offer and market it with success. Anyway, now that I've shared that with you, on to the interview. I really hope that you enjoy hearing Emily's story. And I really hope that if you are someone that is neurodivergent, or you're considering that it might be you, that this gives you some kind of permission to lean more into that as a label. Hello, friend.
Friend, so good to be back.
I know. You are my only, so far, returning podcast guest.
What an honor. Oh my goodness. This is so exciting.
In almost 3 years. So I'm going to link your original episode in the show notes as well, just in case anyone wants to catch that. But we had just finished working together. I was just launching the academy. We just wrapped up all of that. And so much has happened since.
So much, so many things. Here you are launching the academy again, which is amazing.
I know. And we've been to Paris together.
Yes.
We had a romantic trip. Anyway, I'm not going to, as I said in the intro, we're on a time limit. So what I do really appreciate you sharing. Yeah, right. What I do really appreciate you sharing here is your journey with ADHD, because obviously we are friends. We've always met all the time. And I've seen this as it's been going on in the background. And it is something that a lot of people are talking a bit more about. And, the whole struggle to focus and different things. So I appreciate you coming and sharing your take on your whole journey. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
So first of all, when did you go, I think something's not quite right here?
So I would say there was probably a period of about 4 to 6 months last year where I was sending my sibling a lot of memes about ADHD, where I was like, oh, LOL, me. LOL, why are these all so relatable? Like, just like sending all of these. And then I had it kind of hit this moment where I went, do you think I have ADHD? And then my sibling, who is a therapist, was like, well, there are like some things. She's like, but the thing is around like this is that there are like elements of ADHD that are really relatable to lots of people. And so my sibling was like, the only way to really know would be to like go for a formal assessment, but I can send you like the initial form that the therapist will walk through with you. And I was like, okay, maybe. Nah, I couldn't have ADHD. It's just these memes. And then I worked with a few clients who were neurodivergent, and they were kind of sharing about their stories. And I was like, oh, that's happened to me. Oh, that's happened a lot. And as is kind of the way the internet works, obviously, the more you hear about things, the more you look at things, the more like TikTok is like, what if you just got all of these videos about people sharing their experience? And they all started to become just a little bit like too relatable to my life experience, that I decided, I'm like, it's time. Like, I want to go and seek out a therapist to do a formal assessment, just so I know. Because I was like, I think this is something that's really starting to shed a light on like some blocks and barriers that have been going on in my life that I just thought were like personality flaws.
You're saying about TikTok, those whole like TikTok made me do it things that people I love that with you. It's like TikTok made me go and get a formal assessment for ADHD.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things like, there's like the dark side and the light side to the TikTok made me do it, where I think a lot of people can start self-diagnosing and start going like, all of a sudden we're all neurodivergent people in relationships with narcissists. And then on the other hand, it's like, oh, there actually is some grains of truth. And there's so much validation in hearing from other people who are having a similar experience to you.
I read a book, which I will link below, called Stolen Focus by Johan Hari. And it's interesting, like you say, because so many people can relate to some aspects of ADHD. Everyone struggles to concentrate at some times. Everyone feels a bit scattered at sometimes, but it's that difference between, is that something that's happening on a regular, consistent basis, that it's actually having this real negative impact? He talks about various reasons it can happen, like social media has conditioned us to have shorter attention spans, or it could be that, you're not sleeping well, or you're not eating well, or all of these things, which, like you say, anyone can find some grains of truth in it. But what happened when you went for the assessment? What kind of things do they look at with that, as opposed to just like, oh, you're struggling to concentrate?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's quite a few different kind of markers when they're looking at ADHD, because there's also a bunch of different subtypes. Like some people have, more of like the H in the ADHD, like the hyperactivity. And some people, like myself, one of the ones that was the most present was the executive dysfunction. So that's where we have a lot of problem with starting tasks. It's the focus. It's things like, you're sitting there having this task paralysis of sitting on the couch going there. I know I need to be doing these things. And for the life of me, I cannot make myself do it. And I remember once hearing a client talk about the ADHD tags of buying things online and needing to return them, and then completely forgetting to return them. And then, of course, you miss the return window and then you have to pay the money for it. And I was like, hearing her talk about this and like looking next to me on my office floor at this like pile of Amazon returns. And I was like, oh, I see this here. And so exactly like you said, it is very much the type of thing where there are very relatable pieces that we all struggle with. We all, forget about things. We all sometimes get distracted. We all can like start a task and then end up wildly down another task. But really, that's why there's the D in the ADHD, which is the disorder part of it. And that is where it is something where it is really starting to radically impact your life. And so through the work with my therapist, there was quite a few different assessments because very often when you go in for that type of assessment, they're also going to look for things like, anxiety, depression, and any sort of other like neurodivergences or mental health conditions. And, in my case, I do have anxiety as well. And so kind of looking at how these things interact. And so it was so funny. Before I started with a therapist, I was very much like, no, like, I really think I have this. And like, I think I want to like, know, because just being able to put a label to something is so powerful. And then the further along I got, the more I was like, no, I don't have it. Oh, this is silly. The internet's just convinced me. It was suddenly like I started to like be like, well, everyone struggles with these things and like, it's not that bad. And then, the therapist walked me through a couple of assessments and he's like, okay, so that's like a 7 out of 10 for severity. That's like a 6 out of 10 for severity. That's like a 9 out of 10 for severity. And I was like, yeah, but it's not that bad. Like, it's fine. And this is something that happens very, very often to women because a lot of the research that's done around ADHD is in adolescent boys. So what we think of when we think of ADHD is like that little fidgety boy that just can't sit still in the classroom and is like always kind of being disruptive. Whereas it can manifest so differently for people who are socialized as women, and especially if you have anxiety, as I did, is it almost medicates your ADHD for you to the point that you don't notice a lot of the symptoms until you completely burn out and crash and burn, which is what happened to me. And that was really where like what tipped over the diagnosis for my therapist was when I mentioned the burnout that I'd had a few years ago. And he was like, now this all makes sense.
A lot of medical conditions, especially around neurodivergence, are very much centered on research around men. I've read quite a lot about this, and I have a friend who has what she thought was maybe OCD or high functioning anxiety, and she's actually autistic. And it wasn't picked up until much later in life because it's generally not a thing in, our generation that they were looking for. Well, they weren't particularly looking for anyway, but in girls. And it has masked and presented as different things. And it's taken a long time for her to be like, oh, this is what it is. And now everything makes sense.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild how that happens. And it's just like, thanks, patriarchy, for another one of those things, just making our lives difficult.
So externally, let's talk about this because obviously we're friends, so we chat. But externally, people would look and go, Emily's got an amazing business. She's super successful. She helps all these amazing entrepreneurs create their programs and courses. She, crossed $500,000 last year in revenue, all of this stuff. That it would not look like you were struggling with focus, procrastination, anything like that externally. How was it showing up in your business, like on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, it's such a great question. And I think this is something like that exact kind of external how things appeared is I think why I never really picked up on the fact that maybe I had ADHD my whole life because I was always kind of like that high achieving straight A student, like going for grad school and like really pushing myself. And on a day-to-day, what it would look like is I would spend huge chunks of my day just like frozen in paralysis on the couch, not able to do things. So like for client calls, I would be there. I would show up like 110%. I'd be so lit up. But if it would be something like, I want to write content, I want to map out a new program, I want to do any of the other things that you need to do to run a business, I would spend all day like just completely unable to start these tasks. And then around 10 o'clock at night, it would be like my brain would click on and I would go, I can think, I can do this, I can focus. And I would work until like 2, 3 in the morning. And so I always just told myself, I'm like, I do my best work at night. I'm just a creative person. Anytime someone was like, Emily, like, you really need to get better sleep. Like, please stop staying up so late. And I was like,
I was one of those people. Can I just say, we have an 8-hour time difference and I'm a morning person. So the amount of times at 8 a.m. and then 10 a.m. you would message, I'd be like, why are you awake? It's 2 in the morning. You should be asleep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would be, keeping these like ridiculous work hours, which, because I run my own business and I don't take calls like super early in the morning, I could get away with. And it was like, it was obviously not the healthiest choice, but at the time I was like, that's just how I like to do work. And what would also happen is I was incredibly deadline driven, where like if I was like, oh, I'm going to put this course on pre-sale and I'm going to have it ready, and this is great because I'm going to have 6 weeks to build this course, I would build the entire toolkit the day before it was to go live, which as a course creation expert, I would never let my clients do that, ever. I would not tell anyone to try and record, edit, upload, build everything for your course in like a 24-hour period. It was a terrible idea. I do not recommend it, but that's what I would do because it would be like I was unable to start things ahead of time. And so externally, I was doing great and my business was looking great and I had phenomenal clients. And, thanks to my clients being so amazing and the success that we had through our work together, I'd be getting referrals. But I didn't really have any consistency with how I was showing up for any other element of my business.
And when you decided to look at the route of medication, how did it feel at first? Because that's obviously quite a big step, especially as an entrepreneur, because there's no, if I feel ill, I can just take some time off, because it's like, no, it's my business. I've got to be present. So how was that approached with your therapist, and what kind of things went through your head about starting that course of treatment?
Absolutely. So I remember telling myself, like when I first reached out to my therapist, I was like, I just want to get the diagnosis. I just want to know. I'm not going to go the route of medication. And here's the thing. I have zero stigma for medication for other people. I think, I fully believe that you need to choose the options and the treatments that are best for you. And for people that I know who are like, I'm going to go on this anti-anxiety medication, or I'm going to go on medication for my ADHD, I'm going to do this. I'd be like, use what you want. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, no medication for anyone. But for me, I was like, I had the very, the typical response. What if I lose my sparkle? Well, what if my ADHD is what makes me magical? And all of a sudden I medicate and I'm not good at what I do anymore. And so I remember saying this to my therapist, because he was very much like, I really think this is worth an experiment. He's like, the beautiful thing about ADHD medications is that they're not the type of thing that builds up in your system, or it's going to have long-term, if you're on it for this amount of time, it's going to take a while to wean yourself off. It's like they either work or they don't. And he's like, I think it's worth trying. And I very much at first was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't want to lose my magic.
Did you actually say that? Please tell me that you said that to your therapist.
I did. I literally said, I was like, what if I lose my sparkle? What if I lose, what makes me magical? Because I was like, I love that in the moment with my clients, I can go, okay, I don't know what made me think of this. I had this super wild idea, but and then I'll suggest something that is pulled from so far out of the realm of what we were talking about, but it fits really perfectly with their course. And they're like, oh, I love that. And I was like, but what if that is my neurodivergent brain making connections in ways that who knows? And what I really appreciate is my therapist said, he's like, I want you to think about your medication like wearing glasses. He's like, it's not going to change who you are as a person. He's like, it's not going to change, anything about you, in the sense that if you need glasses, which I also do. So I was like, okay, I get this. Where it's like, okay, if I want to be able to see a block away, I just need to put these glasses on so I can read a street sign. And he's like, I want you to think about it like glasses for your brain, where he's like, it's not going to change who you are as a person. He's like, it's just going to stimulate some circuits in your brain so that you can hold on to your dopamine, so that you can really be more of you and be exist the way that you want to, without these kind of other things getting in your way. And I was like, okay, glasses, I can do it. I could try it. I'm willing to try it.
I know from someone that speaks to you very regularly the difference that it's made, because it's incredibly obvious in just the tone of your voice, I'm going to say, specifically in the amount of energy you have at times of day that you wouldn't have had before. So tell us a little bit about how it has impacted you and your ability to run the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the thing. It's been so interesting because I've heard from quite a few people, like even like my brother said to me at one point, I was telling him about my journey, and he was like, I've really noticed a difference. And I was like, wow, like me? You notice a difference? I just feel like me. But I remember so how it works is you kind of do what's called a titration period, where you kind of start at a lower dose and you work your way up and up and up to kind of find where the correct dosage is for you. And every so often I check in with my therapist and we do these benchmarks. And I remember I was just in the best mood, and I was having so much energy. And I remember saying to him, I was like, okay, is this artificially induced? I was like, is it kind of if you're on an upper that it's going to make you feel extra happy?
It's the drugs.
It's the drugs. And my therapist said, he's like, this is you. He's like, this is fully you and how you're supposed to feel. And I just remember having this moment of oh my God, I didn't know I was supposed to feel this way. And so the difference it's made, because I remember it's one of those things that you almost don't notice it until you're reflecting back on it. But I was kind of my husband was asking, he's like, well, what have you noticed? And how has it helped you? And what things have you been able to do? And I was like, I can't remember the last time I worked at night. I was I have a thing I have to do, and then I just do it. And it's and it's one of those things that sounds so simple, but I was like, oh, and I do it to the same quality, if not better, than what I was doing at midnight before. Because I really held on to that story of no, that's my sparkle hours. That's when my full creative genius comes out. And the thing is sometimes it still does. It's not oh, that's completely been switched off. But what I've just really noticed is I was like, oh, I have things I need to do, so I just do it. And I have ideas, so I implement them. And so I've been noticing I've been able to I've been writing content more consistently and being able to share that. I feel so much more present, even more so than I was before on client calls. I very much it's just so noticeable that I'm oh, I feel like I have access to all of me without these drains on my energy or my focus or anything like that. And it's just it's been wild reflecting on it to be the difference.
The biggest difference for me is that you now message me at late afternoon my time, which is your pretty early morning. You'll be like, hi. And before it would have been 2 hours later than that. And you would be like, I can't speak. I'm just going to text because I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Yeah. So has Dylan noticed a difference? Obviously, he asked you how it's affected you and your business, but you're married, you live together. Has he noticed a difference in you as a person?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, he's definitely noticed the difference in energy, the difference in mood. I remember there was one time where I was just we should go out for a run. This is I have so much energy. And he was
who are you?
Doesn't help me well. They're you wanted to do what? It's just it's oh, okay, great. It's so much energy. And so there's been that. And then I think it's also just all those little things. And this isn't just necessarily with the medication, but also with the diagnosis. There's obviously going to be, anytime you're in a household with someone, if one of those people has executive dysfunction, it's going to make the running of the household more challenging, because there's going to be things it's naturally going to get more cluttered, or dishes are going to pile up. Dishes are my weakness. I just can't seem to get them done. And so things like that are well, you said you were going to return that. Why didn't you return it? And it's I don't know how to explain to you, but I want to return it. I know I should return it, but I just can't. And so it's things like that where I've just, knowing about the diagnosis and how my brain works has just been really helpful for a shared language for us. But also now with the kind of extra boost from the medication, being able to kind of show up fully, do the things that I want to do, it's been so powerful.
So the irony has not been lost on me here that you have the ADHD diagnosis, but you are literally an architect of people's courses and programs. And I have worked with you in a one-on-one capacity. And You just asked me questions and I emptied random thoughts out of my head and how I work with clients and different resources I had and how I would approach different things that seemingly made no sense. And then you put them together in a program, which is a very successful program, which I love. So thank you for that. But my point being that a lot of people would go, oh, well, you're not going to be able to focus, or you're not going to be able to rationalize or organize things. But actually, that's exactly what you do. You take people's jumbled thoughts, or you take people's, I'm a one-on-one coach and I could never create a program because I can't put everything that's in my head into a package, and you enable them to do that. So how's that juxtaposition? How's that coexist?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. And I think this is one of those things where obviously there's a really big stigma around what ADHD is. And I think it's especially with how we see it portrayed in like the media, is we think about it's very much those people who are like, oh, a squirrel, like they're just like anything is like going to distract them. And like there are some people and there are some times where that's going to show up. And other times we can actually have like a surplus of focus where it's almost like a hyper focus to the point where it's like, I am all in on this. And I find there's, I don't know enough about the brain science of why it is that when it's for me showing up for someone else, like that presence is just fully there. And really what I find is, I think this is where the way my brain makes connections and sees patterns is truly one of the superpowers, where it's like, I want to see your full mess. And it's almost like I can see where those connections are and how we pull those things in. And then of course, having like the foundations of like neuroscience and learning psychology and how people learn to be able to weave that into a program. So I think it's one of those things where, especially when it's for other people, it is like so easy for me to show up and be like, all right, how do we like organize this, structure this, create containers? I mean, I saw this like joke floating around on TikTok that was like, I think a lot of life's problems can be solved by putting things in tiny little boxes. And I think that's very much, it's a strategy for ADHD and it's a strategy for people's programs where it's like, hey, you feel like you have too much content? Let's figure out how to put it in tiny little boxes. Like, oh, you're not sure like how to put up like craft this activity? Like, let's put it in little boxes. Like, oh, you have a doom pile of stuff that's never organized in your house because your executive dysfunction won't let you keep it organized. Let's put it in a box. Like, there's so many things where I'm like, oh, I actually see how my brain works as like adding even more strength to the learning designer in me.
I love that. Now, I'm mindful of time and I've done a beautiful introduction all about you and your amazingness ahead of this, which people have listened to. So they know that we are hosting a joint VIP day in London in May, which we are so excited about. Emily's clapping. We don't have a video podcast, but she's clapping. And the fun fact here, I think, is for people to know that I hired you to help me design the academy and the mastermind. And as we were doing that, you reached out to me and you were like, hey, could I hire you as my coach to do some messaging stuff? Because I feel like you're really good at that. And I was like, yeah, you can do that. So simultaneously, you helped me with my programs. I helped you with your messaging, which I love because
still using.
You are still using. Yeah. So this came together really organically. Obviously, we spent time together in Paris last year. You were coming back over to Europe. Wouldn't it be fun if we could create this day where literally people could come in and they could get this high-level overview of their course or program mapped out by you on the spot, on the day, and also talk about the messaging, get super clear on the ideal client, know exactly who it is that this program is for, and walk away knowing the message and the way to market it and position it, ready to launch it. And that's exactly what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. And it's going to be in person in London. Words do not describe how excited I am for this experience, because I think there's something so unbelievably magical that happens when you're in the room, that just like the depth and the intimacy that you can have. And like both you and I being there in that room, and we're limiting it. So there's only going to be 8 people. So like, there's going to be so much focused time for us to really go like, how do we take this like unique, magical brilliance that each individual member is, and like pull that into a very, very unique program? Because I think that's something that a lot of people resist when it comes to creating some sort of scalable program, whether it's a course or a group program. They go like, well, I've taken other ones and they've kind of sucked, or I've never seen something that I like, or I don't think that would work for me. And I think that's what you and I both do in our own ways is like, how do we help you be more of you? We're not going to squish you into like cookie cutter programs or cookie cutter messaging. We're going to go, how do we help you design a program that you are so freaking obsessed with, that you know is going to get incredible results, and then also help you articulate those results and articulate the power of that program. So I think that's another place where people really get stuck. So the combination, I think, of like program architecture and the messaging, like amazingness, like this experience, this day, like, oh my gosh, it'll be so good. I'm like, I kind of want to take it, but I'm facilitating it. So like, the other people should just sign up.
Emily's like, I would sign up myself if I could, but I'm going to be busy running it. And also there's cocktails. There's cocktails.
So good to be present, little surprises.
So we are very excited. And obviously I talked a bit more about it in the intro, and the link is down below in the show notes. So anyone that is in the UK or in Europe and you are looking for, I'm going to say that scalable offer, whether it's a course, whether it's a group, however that might look, but you're looking to add that to your product suite and do it in a way that's still in integrity and that is still getting the transformation for your clients and know how to market it as well, then we would love to invite you.
Yeah, sign up. It'll be so much fun. So much fun.
Now, before I let you go, you've got to act like a normal guest and answer the following 2 questions, and then you'll be released. Firstly, which book would you recommend to any of my audience listening who are looking to grow or scale their online business?
Ooh, this is such a great question that I don't know if I have an answer to right off the bat of the top of my head for which book right now.
You can not give a book because you had a book last time.
I did have a book last time. Like, honestly, I think, okay, I'll go off book here because you gave me permission. But I think really something that can happen when we're looking to grow and scale is we can start feeling like we're constantly outsourcing our wisdom. And we're like, I need to read another book. I need to buy another course. I need to do another thing. And I think that's where, like, not to toot our own horns here again, but I think that's where really, when it's time to scale, investing in mentors who are like, I'm not going to teach you to do it my way. I'm going to help pull out your way. And so I think the invitation would be to either like connect inwards and see like, what am I feeling pulled to do? Or if you're like, I have no idea, I haven't listened to my inside voice in so long, then to seek out mentors who can help amplify that.
Seen so much of that this year in the industry where people are over being just told a formula to follow. I think it's been happening for a while, but this year in particular, there seems quite a backlash against that. So thank you. I love that recommendation. And lastly, what is the biggest reframe or belief switch that you have had to make yourself in order for you to get to the level of success that you have today?
I think really, I don't know if I can say it succinctly, but just for me, the biggest one has been like, the right way is my way. And I think it kind of like builds off of what we were just saying, where I think we can really cling to these like proven strategies and like 4-step formulas, because it's like, I want to be successful and I want to help people. But truly, the more that I release my attachment to those and the more I lean into like, this is what feels good for me. Like, this is what feels like pleasurable and luxurious. And like, I get to be more and more and more of myself. That's when I see my business grow, is truly when I'm having the most fun, when I'm feeling the best, when I'm taking care of myself, and when I'm like not pushing myself into someone else's methods. And I'm going like, oh, this hasn't been done before. So I guess that means I'm the one that does it first to show people.
I love that. I love it. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. It was so fun.
Thank you for sharing this. And I'll see you in London in a few weeks.
London so soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ambitious Introvert podcast with me, Emma-Louise Parks. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. As a thank you, one lucky reviewer each month will win a 60-minute one-on-one coaching session with me, where you'll get the clarity and confidence to attract your ideal clients. And if you know someone who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share and help me reach as many fellow ambitious introverts as possible.